Hello.
Hey,
Hey,
what you doing?
what am I doing?
Yeah.
Well, I've been working on a grant report. And
Sounds fun. I know.
oh, ma'am. Nope.
Which one?
Do what?
Which one?
Benedum. I just sent you some questions that I need answered. She disappeared. I asked her a question and she disappeared.
I'm gone.
Are we dating? Is that how that happens?
The doctor in the morning.
Do what?
I'm going to the doctor in the morning at 9:30.
Okay, good.
Man,
Good.
stress.
Tomorrow is Friday. My gosh.
I don't have answers to any of those.
We're fired. That's your job, lady.
No, nobody never told me to keep track of how many was interviewed versus how many were trained. Are you serious?
I don't know. I didn't write the grant. I'm just answering the objectives.
I can tell you how many's trained, what county they're from. I can't tell you total of hours because nobody did their work. And
Yeah.
I know how many we served that was documented. And the last one I can't answer.
Okay. That's what I thought. I was just hoping you'd have something. So.
How is everybody?
Well,
Good. Jeremy, I don't remember who was on here last time, but I know you spoke to Heather. She's at internship, so you're stuck with me for the day.
I think we can make it work.
And Terry and I have seen his presentation enough times that we could probably do it, right? And Seth too.
I can send it to you if you want. Seth probably knows it pretty well, I'm sure. I'll hear it again later, I think.
Yeah, Jeremy's presenting to my team at 4 o'clock today.
Oh, you're getting a double dose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There we go. There's Krisha, Amber, Chris Baker, Seth Henson, Terry, Amber, Fathoms, Note Dagan, Jeremy Dixon. Okay, so like,
Is that Heather? She hasn't left.
moving out. She's leaving now. She just eaten.
Okay.
Joey's getting on here. There he is.
So all of us know each other except for maybe Jeremy, and you can introduce yourself and we will be watching your presentation.
All right, thanks. I'll share my screen just so it's a little easier. Probably the wrong one. So I can keep myself in line here. Can I get screen sharing capabilities? Right, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me again. My name's Jeremy. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Traumatic Brain Injury Program at WVU Center for Excellence in Disabilities. We're a free program essentially to help individuals find resources after they've had a TBI, but basically we're going to kind of go over how prevalent brain injuries are, particularly in the substance use and criminal justice populations. So yeah, we'll kind of get started here. This is a big picture of the brain. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but a lot of times, we primarily focus a lot, particularly in this demographics, more on the frontal lobe of the brain. And you can kind of see the list of different symptoms on the front part of the brain there. And it's also, frontal lobe is the largest lobe of the brain and is the most commonly injured lobe of the brain as well. So essentially that executive functioning slash dysfunction, in some cases, is going to be usually occur from a brain injury to the front part of your head. We define a traumatic brain injury as a bump, blow, or jolt to the head, or a penetrating head injury, which would be like a gunshot wound. For example, we just had a client this past week get referred to our program after they attempted suicide, right? And then they survived the gunshot wound, but unfortunately now they are, okay, yeah, thanks. They're blind after that head injury. In West Virginia, we have to utilize the legislative definition, and that includes anoxic brain injuries, but only due to near drowning. So technically, like an overdose would not classify as a quote unquote traumatic brain injury in the state of West Virginia. A couple of different severities: mild, moderate, and severe. Mild is going to be our most common one. It'd be considered a concussion. A lot of you probably heard of that more than like a moderate TBI, severe TBI, but a mild concussion. A concussion is a traumatic, classified as a traumatic brain injury. A lot of different symptoms. A lot of you probably will see more symptoms on the right-hand side of the screen in the behavioral and emotional standpoint. A lot of times, those injuries can exacerbate some of those already existing symptoms, particularly like your anxiety and depressive symptoms. A lot of times those are going to be exacerbated, particularly even, the more brain injuries that you have, obviously, the more you're going to be affected at when you move forward. Many different causes in West Virginia. Motor vehicle accidents are the #1 cause of brain injuries in the state, and falls is #2. If you're speaking in national numbers, falls is actually #1, and motor vehicles is kind of down there a little bit further as well. But I'll go over like more specific, numbers in a little bit from the study that we're doing. But you can kind of see the highest incident rate. Males are more likely to have brain injuries, different age groups, under 4, between 15 and 24, and then adults over 60. And I think that bottom right-hand corner, that little 2 bullets there is kind of interesting. Always 3 times more likely to have a second brain injury, 8 times more likely to have a third brain injury. So they're gonna, if you've seen one, you're probably gonna, unfortunately, might have another. So it kind of leads us right into substance use and traumatic brain injuries. A lot of times TBIs often result in headaches, obviously, and orthopedic injuries. So I'll just kind of give you an example. If someone had a femur fracture, a tibia fracture from a car accident, right? A lot of times to deal with that pain, they're going to potentially be prescribed opiates. And a lot of times maybe the brain injury is missed in that evaluation process because of the urgent need from a surgical standpoint from a different injury. So in that study, particularly between 70 and 80% of patients with traumatic brain injuries are discharged from with an opioid prescription. But that it can also lead, from a brain injury standpoint, it's going to really result in a lot of times in impaired judgment, reduced impulse control, which could potentially lead to an overuse of the medication. People with brain injuries are 11 times more likely also to die of an overdose than those in the non-brain injured population as well. So I think it's really important to kind of put that study out there because it's just a massive, massive number. A couple more studies here. This is a birth cohort. So they followed this group of people from they were born until they were 25 years old. And they found out that most those hospitalized with their first brain injury before the age of 6 years old, they're 3 times more likely to have a diagnosis of either alcohol or drug dependence by their mid-20s, which by the mid-20s, that's kind of the time that your brain stops developing. And then those hospitalized, again, with that between the 16 and 21 age range, also 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with drug dependence. And then obviously it's going to be a high likelihood of arrest with those individuals as well. Speaking of criminal justice or arrest, about 60% of the incarcerated population, and the estimated of that 60%, about half of them have resulted in unconscious behavior. Essentially half, majority of those are like I mentioned before, mild, like the concussions, mild traumatic brain injuries are about 80%, of the total number of brain injuries. When you get to moderate to severe, it's going to be remaining 10 or 20%. But if you kind of look at this, half of the individuals in the incarcerated population often result to unconsciousness, which is usually a result of that moderate to severe brain injury. Mood disorders, mental health disorders, obviously going to be a big factor when you're talking about brain injury. In this study in 2003, over 20 years ago, you can kind of see the blue line, 30% of the individuals had 0 head injuries in that particular Kentucky prisons. And then after their second brain injury, you can kind of see how that number essentially doubles. Almost in every category, those numbers are going to be elevated from that TBI. Those mood disorders are going to be elevated post traumatic brain injury. So essentially, over 7 million individuals are under supervision. If you make that 60% number, roughly about, over almost 4 million people, over 3.5 million people are living with a brain injury in the justice system. From the reentry side of things, obviously, it's going to be a lot more challenging to, navigate the reentry side of things after they've been released. And a lot of times it can lead to homelessness. So this study is a Colorado study. 74% of those acquired their injury prior to becoming unhoused, which is pretty interesting when you're thinking about it from an executive functioning standpoint, right? If they, not many decisions are being made in the prison that they're making themselves, but when upon release, everything is up to them. And if there's no executive functioning levels, there's no motivation, a lot of those different frontal lobe characteristics and symptoms, how it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to navigate life in the world, right? And in that bottom little bullet there, a couple bullets, a quarter of those individuals had a brain injury before their age of 15. So again, the management of that head injury probably wasn't quite up to par when they were at that age. So obviously those studies that we kind of referred to earlier kind of come into play there. So what can we do? Screen, accommodate, and support. Screenings is really important. We have a traumatic brain injury screener we use from the Ohio State University. It's interviewed essentially to elicit and to trigger lifetime history events of a brain injury. So it's instead of just saying yes or no, have you had a brain injury, yes or no, right? It's pretty simple to say no, but these questions are there to help kind of elicit some memory. That's kind of what the card looks like, the larger card, but I know it's kind of maybe difficult to see, so I did kind of blow them up there. I'm not going to read over them, but you can kind of peek at them real quick. But we've implemented this into a few facilities now, more notably the largest one we did have implemented it would be Recovery Point. And we started it in one of their facilities. We usually will do this upon intake. They will just ask those 5 questions for every individual that comes into the doors there. Upon their intake gets asked these questions. So it started in last February. So they've been collecting some data and some numbers for us as far as that's concerned. So these are the numbers that they've came up with us. So over 600 screens in about an 11-month process, and over 361 were a positive screen out of every individual that came through there in 11 months. If you look in February 23 on the number, we only started in the Huntington facility first. 19 of the 25 were positive for that traumatic brain injury screen, right? But then immediately after finding this number out, they implemented it into all of the other three other facilities that they had. So you can kind of see the running number we have. They kind of give those to us every quarter or so, the numbers, bi-monthly, quarterly, whatever, however, how it kind of works out. But I think those numbers are just so kind of staggering, right? So then what they've been able to do, we have a cool little research project we're working with them on to kind of highlight a lot of different things in a lot of different areas. So I want to go over like the couple of the graphs and tables there. So on the left-hand side, on the figure 1, cause of traumatic brain injury, we talked a little bit ago about, the motor vehicle accidents was number 1. Still holds true in this facility, but number 2 ironically, is violence. I'm sure that's not surprising to some of y'all, but I thought that was one of the most interesting things that came from this. Falls is like number 4 down there. Sports is number 3, it looks like. But even like recreational vehicle is a little lower than I anticipated it being. But MVA and violence are the top 2 for this demographic. And you can kind of see these other ones. I think we talked about mental health a lot a little bit ago. Even when you look at the right-hand side, the triggers, right? Dealing with feeling, that's number 1. Mental health, number 4. So all those things that we talk about, how much of the brain injury kind of exacerbates all that, and all of those symptoms kind of comes into play. I will make note on the left-hand side. We talked about prescription opioids. Excuse me. It's right there, number 5 at 75% in that study that was in 2015. 70 to 80% of those individuals were discharged with an opioid. So it's kind of interesting to see that number kind of smack dab right in the middle from what we found out too. Again, negative implications. You can kind of see on the left-hand side, legal implications is going to be at the top of the list, right? Relationships are going to be up there. And again, mental health obviously is going to sneak in right there also. So there are a lot of different symptoms, right, that they can encounter. We have this cool little card that kind of, I'll kind of explain. I forgot one in this office. Sorry. It's a little symptom strategy card, essentially. So if you look in the top right-hand corner, this is like a memory symptom. So you forget what I did, or what I read, I forget what I did yesterday, things I've learned, forget meetings, appointments, or forget to turn off appliances. So that sounds like the individual, specifically after their brain injury. That little box of information is going to go right below the directions in this, in this little card. So if you flip the card on the back, on the top right-hand corner, you're going to see the accommodations for that individual, for that specific symptom, right? So as you slide the card down, all these other little accommodations are going to pop up for each specific symptom that you're going to see on the left-hand, right-hand side of the actual card. So we like to utilize these, particularly in different settings. I think they're really interesting and really, really important. Even though there's not a lot. I mean, it's so simple. It looks so simple for these accommodations to be put into place, but they're so important, especially in the recovery. So, for example, if it's a substance use facility, for example, we'll kind of urge them to maybe have a place where there's dimmer lights, or if there's a dimmer switch or something in the room, or can you close the blinds so if the person has light sensitivity, that's going to help reduce some of that ability, or improve the ability to focus on the meeting, right? But if they are overstimulated by a larger group of people, maybe having a smaller group of people, 1 or 2, 3 or 4 folks instead of a larger group, right? So there's a couple of different things in here you can take from it, but I think for the most part, they're pretty very small, minute changes that could potentially be made. So with those recovery point folks, for example, they have the ability, after they screen positive, their intake folks, we train them every month or every couple months when they have a new hire. I'll do a training for their staff on the type of services we do, that we have. So they are able to relay that information to the individual that's screened positive for the brain injury. So, and it's up to the individual if they want our services or if they do not want the services. So here we are, we're the designated lead agency for the coordination of services for anyone in the state that has a brain injury, right? So we're the lead agency, meaning a lot of states have like a brain injury association or brain injury alliance. There's not one of those in the state anymore. So we kind of serve that role here in West Virginia. So eligibility requirements, all services are free of charge to anyone who obviously lives in the state, but we have to have, the hardest part is the second bullet, or third bullet, I guess, is to provide the medical documentation of a traumatic brain injury. That's usually the more difficult part, but that's kind of the big reason why we are screening as well. We can't necessarily use that as a diagnostic tool, but there is a longer version of it. If they've never had been diagnosed, you can take the longer version maybe to the primary care physician or PCP or their nurse practitioner or whoever that person could be in their in their life. So the idea, after we get that documentation, there'll be some stuff you'll have to sign, some ROIs, ROEs, just to make sure we can find the documentation. Then they'll do an intake with their intake coordinator, Carrie, to kind of get a little bit more information, a lot of demographic information, history of the brain injury, a little more information on the brain injury itself, in their in their current living situation. And she'll relay that information to our social work team. We have 5 social workers that are statewide. You can kind of see how it's broken down county by county and who has which region. So what they will do, the social worker will do, they'll be able to do a needs assessment in person. Majority of the time, it will always be in person. And they're going to do a needs assessment to really just create a plan to improve the quality of life. So that could be a variety of different things. Every brain injury is completely different. So I can't really give you, it's like a blanket term, but this is what we do, right? Everything is the exact same. So let's just say they need physical therapy or something because their balance is a little off, right? So in that needs assessment, if it reveals that, then that social worker is going to make the appropriate linkage to a physical therapist that works with balance or works with individuals with brain injuries. Speech therapy, that's another big thing. We have neurologists at WVU, particularly at the RNI up here in Morgantown. We have a really close relationship. They have the ability to see patients, virtually but if they feel like they need to be in person, then they'll make that recommendation. But there's just so many different things that could potentially come from that. If they need different, I don't know. There's a lot of different things. If they do different waiver programs, for example, if they qualify for it, they can link them to that. We pay for neuropsychological evaluations. That's something that's a big part of our grant. It's going to help identify any strengths or weaknesses, that an individual has. And the most important part of those is that they do come with the list of recommendations at the end, which is a massive, massive piece, especially for not only the patient, but also the social worker as well, to help provide a linkage specific from the results of that neuropsych eval. We have financial assistance program. It's a big part of our grant as well. It's a pay of last resort. So we have to kind of have making sure no other organization is going to be able to cover the costs. It is completely funded through the Bureau for Behavioral Health. So we do not house the money. So it is a little bit of a process to get it. But it can qualify them up to $2,300 every year. Quick example, one of the Recovery Point graduates utilized that funding for a down payment, for example, on housing after they graduated. And that seemed to be, we've done it a couple times now. And that's going to be probably a very common one, especially the more we get involved in some of these recovery and facilities and reentry facilities. But you can kind of see the other goods and services. It can go medical, dental, vision services, different assistive technology, adaptive equipment, if they need wheelchair ramps, belt, anything like that. It can go toward a variety of things. New tires, for example, is going to be another one. So our social work team is phenomenal at trying to find ways to utilize that funding in a way it's going to help them improve that quality of life. I'll skip over the concussion stuff for schools. We do a lot of technical assistance stuff. We have a big brain we travel around with the different events. We have support groups as well, a virtual support group and a hybrid caregiver support group. I'll put the website and stuff in the chat, and I'll have the number and everything in there. And there's an orange button about how to make a referral. And that's my information if anybody would want it. Yeah. Any questions or anything?
I don't
Jeremy,
have any questions.
Hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. Do you think having a traumatic brain injury, while it was like a twofold thing, a traumatic brain injury while being attempted to be drowned, do you think that could result in seizures or epilepsy?
Possibly, yeah. I'm not really the one to ask that, but to answer that, but I assume that it would probably be something that I think it would increase that chance of that happening, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I also think this would be a useful tool to have in all the prisons.
That would be the goal. It'd be great if that would happen. I know there's a couple places that, a couple prisons we've spoken with, and it's just, I think it's a hard thing to kind of get in with. I think that's why I've started this route. I've tried to call and talk to a few people and just had a little hard to get involved with that. That's why I'm trying this route, from the reentry side and kind of work from outside in, if that makes sense. Because these guys probably know a lot more people within those prisons than obviously we do.
Oh, absolutely. That's a good idea. And I will.
Yeah, and it's this, I think whenever we want to put this and implement some of those symptom strategies and some of these the program into some of these recovery, facilities, is they're going to be there for an extended amount of time. Like, that's a perfect opportunity to get as much information, as much knowledge really about their past, especially if they are injured, and to get them resources before they're leaving, kind of get a list of all that stuff before they, are graduated and headed out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions or anything?
Anybody else have any questions? Joey, do you have any questions?
No, I just got his contact information there so we can follow up later.
Okay. Well, I guess if that's it, thank you, Jeremy, for presenting to us. And I'm sure other councils will be interested in, many of them already have been, but Heather will be also in contact with you as well. Let's see, does anybody else have any announcements for Logan County, other than we're gonna put a naloxone vending machine at Joey's drop-in center soon. Save a Life Day is September 26th, and so we'll be planning and organizing that. There will be a recovery walk through town like there always is here in Logan on the evening of the 26th. And then I guess, Joey, you're probably doing a 5K soon.
Yes.
So we'll announce that when we get more details about that. It's usually in October. I'm trying to think of what else. Overdose Awareness Day is at the Capitol, I think, August 31st. We'll have one more meeting before that happens. We are at the Reach Initiative taking referrals now for our new reentry navigator and community health worker. We interviewed somebody yesterday and looked to onboard them sometime before August 1st. And we interviewed for a Vista, so we'll have some extra help here in Logan as far as the Reach Initiative goes. And we also went to the jail to visit this morning, and should be going up there to do some all recovery meetings in the near future, which I'm excited about. Also building relationships with people before they leave. So that'll probably be an ongoing thing that we do up there. So we'll keep everybody posted. We have to do background checks and volunteer training or whatever, but they said she's like, you have to do a background check. I'm like, well, there's that. And she's like, no worries. But so we should be good to go soon. And let's see, what else do we got going on? There's nobody on here to ask, nobody extra that I haven't already talked to about hiring a QRT recovery coach. So I don't.
Kara Mason from Hope Dealer Project got a notification earlier this week that the governor has agreed to have the state go purple on September 28th. So they are looking for more ambassadors from communities to help turn your town purple.
Yeah, that's cool. Is that your friend from Is that who I think it is? No.
Her
okay.
name's Tara Mason. She's from like Morgantown area.
No, that's not who I thought it was.
Mm.
I was thinking about somebody from your area, but
I've got information, but for some reason we can't drop stuff in the chat in this one. So,
I see that. I'm not sure why.
so if anybody is interested in Logan area or whatever to become a purple ambassador to try and turn Logan purple, I will send it to you.
Anybody?
Might be a cool
I
thing.
mean, I'll wear purple. I don't think I'm up for, I'm trying to organize Save a Life Day right now.
And she's
We
doing
can make
that.
an announcement at
after.
Save a Life Day because there will be a couple hundred people there and say, hey, would you like to wear purple on the 28th? But we can do that. But I'm excited about that. I've really Save a Life Day is one of our favorite times. In Logan County, we distributed like 3,000 kits of Narcan last year, so all year, not just on Save a Life Day. But on Save a Life Day alone, it was over 400. So, it's pretty good. So I don't really have any other updates. That's pretty much it. Reach is hiring people. We're getting a Vista. We're gonna go to the jail and do some recovery meetings. Happy about that.
Yeah.
Your UPS man is gonna hate you next week.
Yeah, and Aaron's out of town, but I will have the truck in my possession, so I'll have to load it all by myself.
Sounds like Matthew and the football team need to start carrying some boxes.
Oh, he's not playing football. He's doing summer basketball right now. He quit the football.
Okay,
And
well,
basketball player. Yeah.
They can carry boxes upstairs.
So I don't want to keep everybody a long time because I know everybody on here is busy. And per me and Krisha were just talking at the beginning of the meeting. I am now going to be busy for a minute, but oh, does anybody have anything? Julia, you got anything? Julia's had an interesting few days at work. But okay, alrighty.
I'll see some of you at 3 and then some of you not. Whatever. Oh, I don't even know. Wyoming. I'm like, I don't even know who I have next time.
Okay.
All right.
Krisha, hey, Krisha, can you jump on with me for a minute?
Yeah, you may stay on here.
Can we? Yeah, this
Yeah.
is your meeting. Okay.